Diem. Theirs was one of those impossible pairings. Say that of a seamstress with a rhinoceros. He'd been contemplating sending his diet into arrears with a plate of duck confit when her red dress swam into the park like a conflagration. By the way, I think that there's a certain restraint people have with laughter at poetry readings, and I want you to feel, comfortable and just free to laugh out loud. I won't take it badly. So, if a line strikes you as funny, just let it rip. Don't hold back, because then I'll feel like it's that weird thing with poetry readings where people don't know what to do if it's right or I say just laugh, or cry or scream, whatever happened. Theirs was one of those impossible pairings, say that of a seamstress with a rhinoceros. He'd been contemplating sending his diet into arrears with a plate of duck confit when her red dress swam into the park like a conflagration. His blood sang a dithyramb, and he looked at the mallards for moral support, except the indiscretion of his culinary longings had immediately sent them packing. So, in the dire hope of arresting her charms, he made like the strangest, most exotic tree in the fruitful behold, curving his spine lordotic and entwining one leg around his neck like a ficus or strangler fig. She proceeded to sit Indian style at his feet and produced a sketchbook and pencil from her eco-friendly canvas bag. She set about capturing his likeness in a blurred frenzy of strokes. It was midsummer, and the sun was a screaming red skillet. His body's prodigious ventilation system broke out the waterworks. He squinted past the Victoria Falls his hirsute eyebrows had become to catch a glimpse of her efforts. To his shock and dismay, she'd not drawn him or anything resembling the alien botanical specimen he'd hoped to impersonate. Instead, she'd drawn a fish. To be more precisely, a carp, whiskers and all. So true was her drawing to form, there was even a ripple running along the tail fin as her hypothetical fish negotiated a particularly rough current. He grew madly indignant. Then something terrifying happened. He began to lose command of his motor functions. He could no longer snap out of this ridiculous posture to voice his outrage at this enchantress he'd gone to such lengths to entice. As this grand guignol barreled its course, he noticed her face grew ever smaller, and her dark brown hair had sprouted pigtails. Her flowing red dress began to shrink and eventually became a pinafore. Before he knew it, his own body went limp, and he felt the wind course through him as water through a stream. His limbs grew fused to his body, and the dyes and fabric of his English-tailored orange suit spilled into the sinewy breeze, were soon absorbed by his form, which was no longer Flap Cornelius suckling the third, but an orange carp. Even his mouth proceeded assiduously to suck in air. He felt he was drowning, but instead witnessed his body rise weightless above the profuse green of the park. The young brunette was now a small child holding the nylon string that controlled his every movement. He flapped drunkenly to and fro in the thermals as she concurrently tugged and fed the line. If there was one last cri de coeur he could utter to this cunning lass as he climbed the sky of her whim, it'd be in Latin, though he doubted she'd understand, let alone hear him through the roaring wind.